After finally recovering from all the Christmas and New Year food, watching the second season of Arcane and getting over the shock that Dune Prophecy wasn't meant to be a one-season show, I finally got around to reviewing the final episode. In short, I had initially hoped that Dune Prophecy would be a well-rounded, self-contained story that could be completed in one season. I was concerned that a story about the Bene Gesserit unrelated to Paul Atreides and the Kwisatz Haderach program might not attract enough public interest to make a second season worthwhile. To my relief, however, HBO has already confirmed production of the second season. I should be happy that the producers of Dune Prophecy have enough faith in the appeal of the Bene Gesserit to give them at least one more season. For me, that means I get to talk about the Bene Gesserit a lot more, and we get to see even more of their abilities and the Dune universe itself, because it has so much more to offer than we've seen in the films or the series so far. But the end of the last episode left a lot of questions unanswered, questions that will need to be answered in the second season. So in this video, I'd like to share with you my personal impressions of the last episode, then talk about some of the unanswered questions that came to mind while watching it, and finally offer some theories about what or who might await us in the second season of Dune Prophecy. Finally, I'd like to announce that my next video will be an in-depth look at the abilities of the Bene Gesserit. If you don't want to miss it, feel free to subscribe to my channel. But enough of the intro, let's jump into the chaos of the last episode. One of the most striking moments for me was when Francesca had her Lady Jessica moment. It was the scene where Yaviko confronts Francesca with the fact that he was never in control of his life and that every decision was made in the background by the Bene Gesserit. Francesca, who, as an imprinter, was trained to simulate a special relationship with her targets in order to gain their trust, seems to throw all her Bene Gesserit training overboard because she has truly fallen in love with the Emperor. There was this tragic element to it, of course, but it was also so frustrating to watch, especially when Natalya kills Francesca with the needle, the Gom Jabbar, and makes it look like the Sisterhood has committed an assassination on the Emperor. I read a comment under one of my other episode reviews that the Sisterhood at the time of Dune Prophecy is nowhere near as refined as it was in the time of Paul Atreides. I can only agree with that, as Valia is only the second Mother Superior. It would also explain why the Bene Gesserit lost Sister Francesca, in the sense that she truly fell in love with the Emperor and disobeyed Valia's orders. Then there's Tula, who hastily leaves her post on Valach 9 to save her son Desmond Hart. She too is no longer acting out of calculation but out of emotion. Her absence then allows Dorotea to take control. This episode is truly a demonstration of the chaotic behavior of the Bene Gesserit as a whole, and is thus also a low point in the history of the Sisterhood, because the sisters are all acting for their own ends and no longer in the spirit of their credo, sisterhood above all. This is the moment that will determine whether or not the Bene Gesserit can continue to exist. The sense of chaos that one feels while watching this episode is therefore a metaphor for the roller coaster ride that these sisters are going through at the moment. Whether they emerge stronger than ever remains to be seen. On the other hand, we can already guess at its success. This is always a problem with prequels. You know how it has to end so that there's no logical break with the originals. The ending with Valia, Ines and Kieran arriving on Arrakis might seem like the solution to all problems, but this is not the case. They are confronted with questions and problems that will definitely have to be dealt with in the next season. Let's start with Empress Natalya. Even in the first few episodes, she was a big question mark for me. She definitely follows Fremen beliefs when she refers to the sandworm as Shai Hulud. That term is associated with Fremen culture, and for me the connection between Natalya and Fremen culture is still missing. There's also the question of why the Bene Gesserit have never been able to bring Natalya under their control. In the last episode, Valya even talks about Natalya's family getting the best truthsayer to build trust in the sisterhood. What went wrong to make Natalya so distrustful of the Bene Gesserit? Of course, Natalya says that the Bene Gesserit took everything that was dear to her, her husband, her daughter, and her power. But it's unclear to me why the Bene Gesserit didn't take countermeasures. Yes, Natalya seemed more of a symbolic figure with no power of her own, but the Bene Gesserit knew early on that she was very ambitious. Why was this ignored, or did something else happen that would better explain this rupture? Another question that came to mind in the last episode is what will happen to the acolytes under Dorotea/Lila's leadership. It all seemed a bit strange how Dorotea was able to take over without any resistance, and that both Valya and Tula were completely unaware of it. The question now is what exactly Dorotea is up to. My guess is that she wants revenge on the Harkonnen, to position herself as the new Mother Superior, and to lead the Bene Gesserit in a more spiritual direction. It's just hard for me to see her as a real antagonist, since she has no real power other than trying to denounce Valya. But Valya's on Arrakis anyway, and she'll probably stay there longer to help Ines find the real antagonists. Incidentally, I find it amusing that Valya, Ines, and Kieran are all three relevant noble families traveling as a group: Harkonnen, Corrino, and Atreides. It gives me the impression of a wildly thrown together pen and paper party, and the game master has to somehow try to explain why we are now traveling as a group. Still, Dorothea's seizure of power feels like a gaping hole that desperately needs to make more sense in Season 2. And while we are on the subject of stopgaps, let's not forget Constantine. I've been critical of his character in other episode reviews, but now I'm hoping that as the new commander of the Royal Fleet, he'll play an important role in the power struggle for the throne. Previously, Constantine seemed very superfluous to me, so I still have a big question mark over what exactly the producers have in mind for this character. But now let's go to the most exciting part. What can we expect in the second season of Dune Prophecy? Let's start with the most important question. Who could be the Bene Gesserit's ominous adversaries? To get closer to answering this question, we can gather the following evidence. Firstly, the faction was able to recognize the genetic potential of Desmond Hart. This would seem to require either knowledge of the parents or the use of thinking machine technology. With Desmond's father dead and Tula hiding her motherhood, the second option seems more likely. The second clue can now be deduced. The enemy is not afraid to use thinking machine technology. This suggests that it must be someone who is very ruthless and expects to gain an enormous advantage by using it. Maybe it's because they don't have much to lose, or because they are politically low profile. The final clue is that the thinking machine technology used to host Desmond Hart works like a virus. Tula has already concluded that an antidote can be synthesized. If we assume that there is a desperate search for a solution to Desmond, and then someone steps forward and claims to be able to protect the people, that person would gain enormous prestige and political power. Based on these 3 clues, I suspect that the Bene Tleilax are behind the capture of Desmond Hart on Arrakis and the use of the thinking machine technology. But who are the Bene Tleilax, also known as the Tleilaxu? They are also a kind of religious order, but one that consists only of male members, thus acting as a kind of counter-design to the Bene Gesserit. Their abilities lie primarily in genetic manipulation. For example, it has been mentioned that Sister Theodosia, as a face dancer, is a Tleilaxu experiment. The Bene Tleilax do not enjoy much respect or political power, having established themselves as organ traders and extortionists during the Butlerian Jihad. They are considered to be repulsive and are categorically excluded from society. This would perfectly fit with the description of the evidence described earlier. They are ruthless and so isolated that no one really knows anything about their behavior. We know they have a great deal of knowledge of genetics, and they probably wouldn't be afraid to use thinking machines. So they could have recognized Desmond Hart's potential, implanted the thinking machines in his eye, and then, after Desmond has caused enough chaos, they could appear as the redeeming saviors of humanity. This would give them a great deal of prestige and political power, as they would be able to choose who would be cured and who would not. Another theory, which I have discussed before, is that we will see the emergence of the Litany Against Fear. We now know that fear makes the virus stronger and that Varya was able to defeat the virus by releasing her fear. With that in mind, I think it's likely that Varya and or Tula will develop the litany so that other Bene Gesserit can protect themselves. If you want to know more about this, you can watch my review of episode 4. Finally, I imagine we'll see the foundations of the Lisan al-Gaib myth being planted on Arrakis. On the one hand, we would see how the Missionaria Protectiva of the Bene Gesserit works, and on the other hand, the Dune series would be able to make a rather elegant connection to the films and to Paul Atreides. This would also allow us as viewers to see in what time scales and with what foresight the Bene Gesserit develop their plans. It would also be all the more interesting to see if Varya was part of that plan. Conversely, this would make a Harkonnen responsible for the rise of Paul Atreides as Emperor of the known universe. It was only through this myth that Paul was able to establish himself as the leader of the Fremen and use them as an army through their faith. The last thing I'd like to know is, do you have any other theories about what might happen in the second season? I'm looking forward to reading your expectations and hoping to see you again for my next video.